The auditorium lights bore into me like interrogation lamps. My hands shook as I gripped the thin printout of my story, face flushed and prickling. The 5 faculty judges sat in their row, not looking at me as much as through me, through the coward as she stood fidgeting under the dull orange stage wash, with every word rehearsed and now stuck somewhere between my chest and my throat. I tried to start again. 3 sentences in, my voice tremored and slipped. I saw Sunwoo, my cousin, stifling a grin in the audience beside my mother, who stared blankly at her lap. My father's seat was empty. We all knew he couldn't stomach events like this. I stammered at the 4th word, panic sticking inside my mouth, and the 5th word fell like a collapsing paper figure. My eyes locked with Mrs. Kim, my high school literature teacher, and a family friend, who arched a brow with the faintest trace of pity. That look hated pity when I was 10. Grown up, it stabbed deeper. Finally, I blurted sorry, and the paper slipped from my grasp. The sheets fluttered across the floor, stupid white birds with all my metaphors. And for a second there was silence, everyone waiting for me to recover, but all I saw were rows of eyes as pitiless as the faculty. I ran, shoving open the side door, the sound of my shoes echoing off the linoleum, and then the slap of my palms against my burning face as I bent behind a vending machine in the hallway. Wrecked by sobs too humiliating even for myself. When it was quiet again, I crumpled down onto the cold floor and wiped my face with the back of my hand, tasting the sourness of embarrassment and the faint metallic edge of panic that seemed to sprout directly from my own ribs. Much later, as I forced my way home through the drizzle, avoiding Sunwoo's taunting shadow, I heard the grown-ups at dinner fall on me like a parliament of crows. "So you froze again?" my Aunt Singja asked, stirring her soup with too much clatter. She had a voice that could shatter glass and patience. My mother hunched beside her, lips pressed together, and Sunwoo looked up from his phone, smirking. It would have been almost theatrical if it didn't reek of something so old and tired. I lay in bed that night tracing cracks in the ceiling with my eyes. Words came, my story, running away from me. I tried to recite them quietly, just for myself, my mouth shaping the dialogue of a fictional girl braver than me, a girl who never ran from a stage. Around 3 a.m, my father returned home with the faint scent of barley soju and tucked into sleep without a word. That was fine with me. Silence was preferable to disappointment. Days passed, then months. And the audition replayed itself in my mind with sharp clarity every rainy night, the stage, the sheets, the stifled smirk of Sunwoo. School ended and people grew up and moved on to universities, cramming for civil service, law schools, accounting programs. Seoul's streets became narrower, more claustrophobic the longer you knew them. Everyone's map seemed drawn for them, except mine. One evening, my mother caught me by the arm as I ducked into my bedroom. "Listen," she said. "You promised you'd get serious this year. Take the accounting exam. If you really want to write after that, then okay. But," I pulled away. "I'll study, just not for that." Stories are just stories, Hamie. We're not a child anymore. That was the refrain. When I won second prize for a short story contest nobody in my family cared about, Mrs. Kim mailed me flowers. My mother didn't read the piece. My cousins rolled their eyes. I started my undergraduate years in comparative literature at a run-down campus near Gangnam, spending my days scribbling fiction during biology lectures, missing friend gatherings, declining Sunwoo's invitations to clubs and blind dates alike, as if existence could be proved by accumulation of failed attempts. Years passed that way, sleepless, eyes dry and red behind the old laptop screen. At family dinners, the conversation always circled back. "So," Aunt Sungja asked, "still nothing published? Or, have you considered teaching instead? Something safe?" Sometimes just silence, as if maybe one day I'd arrive with a normal job after all, and everyone could finally stop worrying. I started clinging to stories as to a raft. One night in October, desperate for a sign, I submitted a story to a mid-tier literary journal. I didn't tell anyone. I barely told myself. I drank terrible convenience store coffee and sat by the Han River, looking at the city lights stuttering across the black water, notebook in my lap, shivering. If these words went nowhere, I told myself, maybe that would be that. It wasn't. 6 weeks later, an email landed in my inbox at 2 a.m. "Congratulations," it began, and when I read the line again, "Hi, Hammy, we are delighted to inform you," the room fell quiet, except for my own breathing. I sat with the news for a while, not trusting it, rereading until the words blurred into light. By 9 the next morning, it hardly seemed real, even as the editor's message kept pinging on my phone and promises of a contributor's payment drifted into my inbox. I showed my mother the email. She blinked at it, at me, then pushed her glasses up her nose. "That's good," she said. "Is it enough to live on?" When I said no, not yet, she pressed her lips together and wrapped leftovers for Sunwoo. The story went online, but no calls came. No prizes, no parade. There were a dozen more nights like that, acceptances, rejections, sometimes months with neither. My bank account wobbled dangerously close to zero. I took gigs copy editing, translating health pamphlets, anything that kept a roof over my head. Small magazines gave me space, and in those corners I understood a kind of patience. Sometimes I wondered if my family was right, if this was some elaborate self-punishment instead of a calling. 3 years into this quiet struggle, an editor named Mr. Kwan called. "I read your last story, Floodplain. Would you consider pitching a novel to our publishing house? Something longer?" There was no immediate elation, just animal fear. I said yes anyway, and spent a spring walking Seoul's backstreets with a notebook. The novel, when it came, was a slow birth. Pages were deleted, started over, stitched back together. My friends drifted into jobs, promotions, marriages. I haunted bookstores, eavesdropped in cafes, studied strangers' hands, wore shoes thin wandering Dongdaemun and Shinshen, looking for the traces of the protagonist I'd invented. My days were brackets of insomnia, my skin pale from apartment gloom. Mr. Kwan called every 6 weeks, calm and businesslike. "Don't rush, just finish." I clung to that. I missed my cousin Sunwoo's wedding. Couldn't afford the train ticket, but also couldn't face another round of "still nothing published" jokes. My mother visited once a month, cleaning up dishes and fretfully eyeing the drip from my bathroom faucet, urging me to eat real food and find a real job. My father never visited. My family's disappointment, I suspected, had become his own. All the while I wrote. I wrote wanting to stop and not letting myself, because even if nothing came of it, even if the book was only a ghost, at least I would know I'd finished one. When I finally submitted the manuscript, I slept for 10 hours and then woke up with the taste of rain on my tongue. The waiting was its own kind of torture. Weeks passed. Mr. Kwan's messages arrived less often. One late morning, after I'd half convinced myself nothing would come of it, "We're moving forward," he said. The board loved it. There was a contract and an advance, just enough to breathe easier. The book would be published next spring. I didn't tell my family until the proofs arrived. Maybe part of me needed the object, not the promise, the physical book like armor. My mother flipped through the galleys with a strange, uncertain tenderness, then set them down on the dining table. "So you really finished it? A whole novel?" She tried to smile, her hands trembling. "What is it about?" I struggled for ordinary words. "It's about a girl who grows up feeling invisible, and how she finds her voice. I left the rest unsaid, but she seemed to hear anyway. That evening she made kimchi stew, humming as she cooked, her eyes softer, as if seeing me new for the first time. The book's launch was scheduled at a bookstore in Gangnam, an event cunningly orchestrated by Mr. Kwan's team, Sentinels of the Midlist, with a little media splash, some literary friends, and the inclusion of family members who'd previously shrugged off my efforts. I had nightmares for a week in advance, public speaking, the old auditorium panic, the taste of humiliation, but the day arrived. The city was chilly, March winds scraping loose cherry blossom petals by the sidewalk. I wore my most neutral black dress. My shoes were still patched at the toe, small things not easy to replace with a new writer's pay, but enough to look respectable for the evening. People trickled in. Mr. Kwan and his staff, a handful of writer friends, old classmates, and inevitably, my entire family, led by my mother and a sheepish Sunwoo. Aunt Songja, eyes sharp as ever, arrived last, pulling her daughter by the arm as if dragging her to a museum. The crowd filled the rows of mismatched chairs. Books, my books, perched in neat stacks at the front register, my name in clean, generous Hangul script. The publisher's host introduced me and read a passage from the opening chapter. I walked to the lectern, lights brighter than expected, stomach tight but breath steady. I began to read. This time the words did not betray me. I heard my voice, clear and slow, translating the girl on the page into air. The audience was quiet. My mother pressed a tissue to her nose. Mrs. Kim appeared from nowhere, tears in her eyes. Midway through the chapter, I felt a blush of old nerves, but I kept going. Paragraph by paragraph, building momentum, witnessing something transform in the room. They listened, Sunwoo even, chewing the inside of his cheek, face unreadable. When I finished, the applause startled me, jagged and loud. My aunt's hands clapped hard, almost reluctantly, but they clapped all the same. I stepped back from the podium and heard people calling my name, my real name, not spoken as an afterthought. Photographs flashed, editors offered kind words. The event wound down. I signed copies for strangers and friends, pen shaking slightly only for my own family. The concrete proof of it, my name on covers, stacks of books moving, people waiting with pens and questions, was impossible to ignore. Even for them. After, Sunwoo handed me his copy, not meeting my eyes at first. "So, look at you," he said low, almost sheepish. "The real deal, huh?" He cracked a grin, but this time not unkind. He reached out, tentative, and squeezed my shoulder with awkward affection. Sorry I was a jerk all those years. Aunt Songja hovered nearby, lips pursed. She said, "I read the opening. Surprised me, really. You capture soul like I remember it, when I was young. Maybe you'll write something about the family next." There was a frail attempt at humor, but I could hear the fence coming down. Outside, the sky was ink-colored and cold, but I breathed easier than I had in years. My mother stood at the curb, clutching her coat tight against the chill. Her voice, gentle for once, found me. "You did well, Haimi. I was wrong." She let a hand rest on my arm and didn't let go for a long time. They went home, and I stayed behind to help the booksellers stack the leftover copies. The city seemed suddenly bigger and kinder.